Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did his best with the people of Mecca and they rejected him, and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to At-Ta'if, and as we mentioned last time, the people of Thaqif also did not respond to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a positive way. We talked about him coming back to Mecca, feeling that these two villages that are not too far from each other have rejected him. And these were the two great villages in the vicinity of where the Prophet ﷺ was living. And as we mentioned, when Quraysh said, وَقَالُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ عَلَى رَجُلٍ مِّنَ الْقَرْيَتَيْنِ عَظِيمٍ, they kept bragging, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, you would have revealed the Qur'an to one of the prominent leaders of these two villages, meaning Mecca and At-Ta'if. When the Prophet ﷺ went back to Mecca, he came back with a new determination and with a new plan. Now it seems that Quraysh has decided that they're going to reject the call of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's sort of useless to keep trying with them, especially that the leaders are the same and they are prominent in their enmity to the Prophet ﷺ. Therefore, there's got to be a new plan. The Prophet ﷺ started thinking about, instead of, as we mentioned last time, instead of going to these tribes in their own lands, especially that some of them were quite remote from Mecca, it would be much easier to meet with the delegates of these tribes when they come to Mecca, especially for Hajj. And we can see that gradually, actually, this is what happened. Some individuals started coming to Mecca for business or for Hajj, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent some of them in the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Among them was a leader from a tribe called Daws. Daws was a strong tribe, not as strong as Quraysh, but still it was a strong tribe. And that leader, At-Tufayl ibn Amr al-Dawsi radiallahu anhu, was a very wise man. He was a poet, he was a good speaker, and he was one of the leaders, one of the obeyed and followed leaders in his tribe, Daws. And when he came to Mecca, Quraysh, as usual, did the same that they did with any foreign delegate coming to Mecca. The first thing that they would do after showing hospitality, of course, is warning that individual about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Quraysh came to At-Tufayl and told him, listen, Tufayl, you are dear and near to us. We're warning you about this man in Mecca named Muhammad. Don't listen to him. Don't even get close to him, because his speech is so amazing. He might change your mind. So it's better not even to listen to him. And At-Tufayl felt that this is a sincere advice. So he heeded that call, and he basically went to an extreme measure, filling his ears with cotton, just to block any sound from getting into his ears that he didn't want to listen to. And he was making tawaf around Al-Kaaba when he saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam there, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was reciting the Quran. Now there are two narrations about what happened. One of them is that At-Tufayl, just out of curiosity, said to himself, well, I'm a wise man, I'm a poet, I'm a speaker, I know the good speech when I hear one, and no one can fool me, no one can deceive me. What am I worried about? What am I scared from? So he removed that cotton from his ears and he hid behind the curtains of Al-Kaaba while the Prophet ﷺ was making tawaf and while the Prophet ﷺ was reciting Quran, and he kept getting closer and closer to the Prophet ﷺ to listen to what he was saying. And the Prophet ﷺ was reciting the Quran, not paying attention to that person who was sneaking and trying to listen to what he's saying. Until the Prophet ﷺ was done, At-Tufayl came up from where he was hiding and he approached the Prophet ﷺ saying that, I liked what I heard. Can you give me more? Tell me about what you're preaching or what you're inviting to, because your people have warned me about you. And the Prophet ﷺ started telling him about Islam, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and about the mission of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At-Tufayl immediately liked that. He understood this is not natural human speech. I'm familiar with that. I'm an expert in that. So this is something new. He accepted what the Prophet ﷺ came with, and he immediately declared his Islam and fellowship of the Prophet ﷺ. Now look at what At-Tufail radiallahu anhu did. Immediately when he became a Muslim, he did not say, well, I'm going to stick to the Prophet ﷺ to learn from him, and I'm going to stay here in Mecca to gain more knowledge. He said, no, I'm going to go back to my people immediately to warn them and to give them this news and invite them to Islam. That's the message of a wise person. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ for a favor. He said, my people are going to ask for a proof. They have not seen you, they have not heard directly from you, so I need a proof that can show that I'm honest in what I'm going to be telling them. And the Prophet ﷺ asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give At-Tufail a proof. Upon approaching his village, At-Tufail suddenly found some light shining between his eyes. So he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, please don't make it something in my face that people might think that this is a revenge from the gods, that I have abandoned our deities and so on. So Allah, anywhere but in my face. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that light at the tip of his whip. And At-Tufail, when he went to his village, he went home. His wife was waiting for him, and his parents were waiting for him. And he was very kind to his parents. His father, upon approaching him, welcoming him from that long trip, At-Tufail said, stop, I'm not going to talk to you. And his father said, why? You've been a very good son and I've been a good father to you. He said, well, you're following a different faith right now. You're following a different religion. I have embraced Islam and I followed Muhammad. So the father said, your religion is my religion. Tell me about what you have learned. And At-Tufail radiallahu anhu started telling him about Islam. The father and the mother immediately embraced Islam. He went home to his wife. Again, his wife, upon trying to approach him, he said, stop, I cannot approach you. Why? You're my beloved husband. He said, because you have your faith and I have mine. And she said, your faith is my faith. And basically, he invited her to Islam and she embraced Islam. So that was the easy part of the mission of At-Tufail radiallahu anhu. He then went to the rest of his tribe, inviting them to Islam. Although he was very much beloved and trusted by this tribe and followed in this tribe, they had some hesitation. And At-Tufail thought that his mission is going to be of a great success. He's going to have that immediate response from his people. So when they were delayed and they hesitated, he got mad with them. And he went back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with a request. Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Daws has rejected me and has rejected faith. Raise your hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to destroy Daws, who has rejected this faith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised his hands, and At-Tufail, upon seeing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam raising his hands, said, what have I done? Said to himself, what have I done? I'm going to destroy my own people. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised his hands and asked, Allahumma hdi Dawsan wa'ti bihim muslimin. Oh Allah, guide Daws and bring them back as Muslims. And then he told At-Tufail, go back to your people and be patient with your people. It's not just going to be like that immediate response. It took the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that many years to invite a few people to Islam. So how about a tribe? It's not going to change overnight or immediately. So At-Tufail went back to his people and he followed the advice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of being patient, of being kind and mild-mannered with them. Later on, At-Tufail, several years later, came back to Medina after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has migrated with, as the narrators say, 70 or 80 of his people, all of them as Muslims. And he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in future expeditions or wars to make them the right wing of the army of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these trusted, strong, believing warriors. So that was one example. Another example was and Daws, by the way, was on some of the trade routes of Quraysh. That's why it was very important not to lose friendship with Daws. That's why Quraysh could not attack At-Tufail. Otherwise, they would threaten the safety of their trade when passing by the villages of Daws. Another person who came to Mecca also for Hajj or for some other business was a man who came from a tribe that was known as an evil tribe, a tribe that had their source of fame was that they were bandits. They used to be thieves and killers who intercepted the trade caravans and basically robbed the travelers or killed the travelers and took their money and so on. And that tribe was called Ghifar. And that man, whose name was Jundub ibn Junada, later on to be known as Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu, he came to Mecca for some of his business, and he heard about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and for several days he was trying to find, where is this man? I want to listen firsthand from him. And for several days he could not recognize who the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is. But someone was paying attention to this man and keeping an eye on him, and that was Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. So after 3 days, seeing that this man is coming to the same spot every day, looking around, not doing anything in particular, but just looking around, he approached him and said, "Isn't it time for the stranger to know his destination? أَمَا آنَ لِلْغَرِيبِ أَنْ يَعْرِفَ مَنْزِلَهُ?" And Abu Dharr understood this coded question. So Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu told him, "Just follow me. I'm going to walk a few steps ahead of you and you follow me. And if you see that I'm trying to tie my shoes, know that someone is following us, so go in a different way. If I don't do that, then just keep following me." So he kept doing that until they reached the house where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was meeting with his companions. And he introduced himself to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And upon hearing that he's from Ghifar, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was surprised. From Ghifar, that tribe with the bad reputation. And Sayyidina Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu told him, "I want to be with you. And I'm going to go and invite my tribe to Islam. These people with the bad character, I'm going to try to change them and guide them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." And Sayyidina Abu Dharr later on went to his tribe, invited them to Islam. It took some time, but eventually they came back to the folds of Islam. Another tribe was Aslam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, "Aslam salamaha Allah wa Ghifar ghafar Allahu laha." He used part of the name of the tribe, Aslam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them peace, because Aslam is from Silm, which is peace, and Ghifar ghafar Allahu laha. Ghifar from Ghafara, Maghfirah, forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven Ghifar. So these were two individuals that had a great impact in their tribes upon understanding what their mission is and taking that responsibility directly from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam nevertheless kept going, trying to seek these different tribes that are coming to Mecca for Hajj. So in 1 year, and that was around the 9th year of the Ba'tha of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tried so many tribes. He tried a tribe in Yemen, Kinda. He tried a tribe in Asham, Ghassan. He tried a tribe in the center of Arabia, Al-Yamama, the tribe of Bani Hanifa. And he tried a tribe at the edge of Arabia in Iraq, Banu Shayban. And he tried the 5th tribe, Bani Amr ibn Sa'sa'a, also in the middle of the desert. All of these were big tribes, tribes that could be a substitute for Quraysh. These are tribes that are relatively distant from Quraysh, not really in the close vicinity, so Quraysh does not have that direct impact on them. They have some trade interests between them and Quraysh, and the main interest, of course, of coming to Mecca is for Hajj. But other than that, they're sort of independent of Quraysh, or in fact, Quraysh would need these tribes, those from Yemen for trade, those from Sham for trade, and so on and so forth. Those from Yamama for supplies, for food supplies, and so on. So there were some needs from Quraysh. When the Prophet ﷺ approached the tribe from Yemen, from Kinda, they did not respond positively to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he invited Ghassan, they said, well, thank you, but no thanks. We are Christians. We are close to the Roman Empire. We have our peace with the Roman Empire. We don't want any trouble there. So thanks, but no thanks. When he approached Bani Hanifa from Yamama, Al-Yamama is in the center of Arabia, what's now known probably as Riyadh or that area in Saudi Arabia. And these were tough Bedouins, very tough Bedouins. So when the Prophet ﷺ proposed Islam to them, they responded in a very nasty way, and they refused and rejected the Prophet ﷺ. Those Banu Hanifa later on are the people who are going to generate Musaylima al-Kadhab, the one who challenged the Prophet ﷺ and the one who claimed to be a prophet during the life of the Prophet ﷺ and after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. And he was killed later on as a non-believer, of course. But the two more important tribes are Bani Amr ibn Sa'sa'a and Bani Shayban. Bani Amr is a strong tribe, and their leader or their spokesperson was called Bayhara ibn Firas. So the Prophet ﷺ proposed Islam to Bani Amr, strong tribe, and they kept listening, and their speaker, their delegate, Bayhara, kept listening to the Prophet ﷺ and started thinking to himself, if I take this man, I can rule over all the Arabs. He's so eloquent, his speech is so effective. If I take him and I control him, I can control all the Arabs. So when the Prophet, he asked the Prophet ﷺ, what are you inviting to? And the Prophet ﷺ talked about Islam and what Islam is and so on. And Bayhara said, this is fine, this is nice, we like that. We are willing to follow you. We are willing to take you with us. We are willing to protect you and defend you on one condition. And the Prophet ﷺ asked, and what that condition could be. And Bayhara said, well, after you die, we would be the rulers. So the responsibility would be transferred to us after you die. And the Prophet ﷺ said, that's not my decision. I cannot make that decision. This is a matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ هَذَا الْأَمْرَ لِلَّهِ يَضَعُهُ حَيْثُ يَشَاءُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give that authority or that responsibility to whomever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decide. I cannot give you that promise. So Bayhara said, so what are you talking about? Are you coming to us to protect you and to be the enemies of all the Arabs in order to protect you? And then when you die, we do not have that control. We don't need this thing. And basically, when the Prophet ﷺ was about to leave and he rode his camel, he took his stick and poked the belly of the camel, and the camel threw the Prophet ﷺ from its back. So that was a nasty act from a nasty person. 3 individuals who were sitting in that meeting with the Prophet ﷺ liked what the Prophet ﷺ did, so they started beating that man, Bayhara, and cursing him and so on. And the Prophet ﷺ praised these 3 men and cursed the other 3 that caused this enmity against the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ went to another tribe, Bani Shayban. Bani Shayban is in Iraq, the edge of Arabian Peninsula and the border with the great empire of Persia, Faris. So the Prophet ﷺ approached them, and he was accompanied by Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, the 2 great companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, of course, for a particular reason, because as we mentioned before in our discussion about Sayyidina Abu Bakr and his personality and some of his characters and traits, he was the most knowledgeable Qurashi. He was the most knowledgeable from Quraysh, about the rest of Quraysh, and in general about the other Arabs. He had great knowledge of genealogy, who is good from which tribe and from which branch and so on and so forth. So he was the guide of the Prophet ﷺ. So when they approached this delegation of Bani Shayban, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was the first person to speak, and he asked, where are the people from? And they said, from Bani Shayban. The responder was Mafruq, the leader of Bani Shayban. So he said, where are the people from? He said, we are from Bani Shayban. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu wanted to know how big is that tribe. He was not very familiar with the details of the tribe. So he wanted also the Prophet ﷺ to hear about the tribe. So he asked, and how big is your tribe? So Mafruq said, about 1,000, a good number. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, 1,000 is a good number. 1,000 is not going to be defeated due to a lack of fighters. And then Sayyidina Abu Bakr asked, and how is protection among you? How is your tribe? Is it a strong tribe? Is it a weak tribe? Not just a matter of number. So Mafruq started talking about his tribe, that we are a strong tribe. We do not accept injustice or oppression. And we are so angry when we meet our enemy. And we are so strong when we get angry. We prefer the weapons to the children. And we prefer the fighting against just owning cattle and so on and so forth. And we are a very strong tribe. All of these were good news. Mafruq, when he heard Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu asking these questions, he said, لَعَلَّكَ أَخَ قُرَيْشٍ. Maybe you are the man from Quraysh that Quraysh is talking about, meaning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, no, I'm not him, but there he is. And he pointed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was listening to this discussion. So Mafruq asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and what are you calling for? What are you inviting to? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him a brief introduction to Islam. I am the messenger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm inviting people to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and abandon the worship of the idols. I am inviting to good manners. I'm inviting to this and that. Mafruq and the other delegation, the rest of the delegation, are listening with interest to what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying. And he said, all of these are good things. What else are you inviting to? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited a few ayat from close to the end of Surah Al-An'am. قُلْ تَعَالَوْا أَتْلُ مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ أَلَّا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Basically the 10 commandments that come at the end of Surah Al-An'am, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Muslims in Mecca about worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, being kind to their parents, being kind to their children, not to kill the children out of the fear of poverty, or out of poverty actually, and not to be unfair in buying and selling, not to be unfair to the orphans, and all the good manners that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave in these ayat. So Mafruq said, this is great. What else do you have? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited the part from the ayat from Surah Al-Nahl. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands justice and perfection, العدل والإحسان, وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits lewdness and bad behavior and all the things that are abhorrent and aggression against other people. يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. So Mafruq was astonished, was amazed by what he's hearing, and he said, this is great, I love that. But at the same time, since he's the leader of the delegation, sort of the political leader of the delegation, he did not want to decide for the whole delegation by himself. He wanted to have more of a discussion with the other leaders. Although he liked what the Prophet ﷺ said, and if it were for him, he would follow the Prophet ﷺ. But he said, here's our Shaykhuna wa sahibu dinina, our leader and our religious leader, Hani ibn Qubaysa. So can you please address him? And Hani said, I heard what you said, and I like what you said, but I can't make a decision on the spot. This is a very serious matter. I cannot just change my religion based on a few words that I heard from here or there. Give us time to think, and take some time to think also about what our proposition might be. But in the meantime, here's also our leader and our military leader, Al-Muthanna ibn Haritha. So now three leaders were talking. Mafruq, the political leader, Hani ibn Qubaysa, the religious leader, and then Al-Muthanna ibn Haritha, the military leader. So now it's time for Al-Muthanna to speak, and he said, I heard what you said, I like what you said, but let me tell you about our situation. We are living in a vicinity to the empire of Kisra. And we had a confrontation with him about 10 years ago in which we won. Surprisingly, Yawm Dhiqar that we talked about before, we won that battle. But we had a very fragile peace with Kisra. And among the terms of that peace is that we cannot protect anyone who can cause trouble in our land or in the land of Kisra. We are on these rivers and these water wells that separate Arabia from Persia. So when you cross the river and you step on the Persian side, we cannot protect you. But within our side, you have all the protection that you want. But we cannot cause trouble with Kisra by inventing a new religion or by calling for a new idea that might alienate him and irritate him. The Prophet ﷺ is listening to all of this eloquent speech, very composed, very polite, very reasonable. And the Prophet ﷺ responded to their offer. They said, we are willing to take you, provided that you do not instigate Kisra against us, you do not cause any trouble with Kisra. Within our land, you can say whatever you want, you're going to be fully protected and defended, but beyond that, we cannot guarantee your protection. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَقَدْ أَحْسَنْتُمْ إِذْ أَفْصَحْتُمْ فَبَيَّنْتُمْ, that you have been very kind, you have spoken, and you have been very eloquent and very clear about what you can do and what you cannot do, but I'm afraid I'm going to reject your offer, because this faith can only be taken by someone who takes it in a comprehensive way. إن هذا الدين لا يقوم به إلا من حاطه من جميع جوانبه. So thank you. And the Prophet ﷺ left. And while leaving, he told Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Ali, can't you see that there are still some honorable people, although they are non-believers, but they have some very good honorable traits? And that was the end of the meeting. Actually, there was one last word of the Prophet ﷺ before leaving. He told this delegation from Bani Shayban, would you, if the day comes when you defeat the army of Kisra and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you control their land and imprison their women who came in fighting and so on, would you be willing at that time to embrace Islam? And they said, you have our word. If that happens, that we are superior and we overcome and we defeat Kisra, there wouldn't be any reason to prevent us from embracing Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ said, and that will happen, which means that eventually they're going to overcome and they're going to defeat Kisra. That was the end of, or almost the end of, the negotiations between the Prophet ﷺ and some of these tribes. However, there was one last step that we're going to talk about, inshallah, next time, about a small delegation that came for another purpose, and there was the first seed for a bright future for the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. So until next time, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.